the glory.
Okay.
Sing worthy
Why
of
should teens believe in the Bible?
The flippant answer is the same reason adults should. But the real answer is this. It really lies in our manuscript evidence, specifically of the New Testament. Okay, and I'm going to go through some of these numbers with you because I personally find them fascinating. The little fragment that you see on your screen there is part of P57, which is the oldest fragment that we have of the book of John. It's actually about the size of a credit card, and it was found from 125 AD. Now remember, Christ died in either 30 or 33 AD, so this is within 100 years. This is a manuscript. Now understand a couple of terminologies here. Autograph would be the original handwritten of the apostle who wrote it. So Galatians, the autograph would have been the actual penned writing of Paul. A manuscript is a written copy of that. Okay, and admittedly, it is a copy of a copy of a copy. Now, a lot of people will try to use the telephone, a lot of atheists will try to use the telephone game as an example of why this then makes the Bible unreliable. But what the telephone game does is it goes from one person to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. Now, first of all, when you play the telephone game, a lot of people purposely screw it up, right? But the second thing is it's a single chain, but that is not how the manuscripts were handed down. We'll use Galatians, one of the earliest letters of Paul. Paul pens the letter to the Galatians. It gets sent to the church in Galatia. Now, it was meant to be distributed, and that's in fact what happened. So that one autograph got copied multiple times, and then each of those got copied multiple times, and then multiple times, and then multiple times. So it's more of a pyramid rather than a line. The second thing is when textual critics are looking at ancient things, they want a large number. The more number of manuscripts they have, the more accurately they can know what was originally written. Now, we don't have time to go into exactly why that is, but just keep that in mind. Now, when we talk about Greek manuscripts alone, there are over 5,600 Greek manuscripts, just Greek. Because understand here, shortly after the Greek was written, then people started copying it into other languages by the thousands at times, okay? So 5,600 Greek manuscripts. Now, what most people think is that these Greek manuscripts are like P57 and this small credit card thing. That's not the truth at all. The average Greek manuscript, each individual Greek manuscript, the average number of pages, average, is 450. And in fact, when you look at the sum total, it is 2.6 million pages of Greek manuscripts. 2.6 million. That's a stack like a mile high, okay? It is an enormous number of manuscript pages. And there are 124 of them within 300 years of the death of Christ. So this is an exorbitant amount of manuscript evidence there. Now, if you just take those 124 manuscripts that are within 300 years, within 125 years after the death of Christ, you can put together 49% of all the verses of the New Testament. Okay? And I'll explain in a minute why I'm only talking about the New Testament. The bottom line is, if you believe in the New Testament, you get the Old Testament kind of thrown in there because Jesus quoted it, and so did the other apostles. To give you a comparison of New Testament Greek manuscripts versus other books of antiquity, Homer's Iliad. Now, Homer was written before the New Testament, in the 8th century BC. The earliest manuscript, the earliest, was 400 years later. And it is by far the second most quoted one. We have 1,800 manuscripts, handwritten manuscripts. Plato, right? Plato is one of the world's most renowned philosophers. Plato wrote in the 5th century BC. The first manuscript we had was from the 3rd century AD, 800 years later, and we have 210. Let's look at Tacitus and Pliny the Elder. Why? Because they were writing about the same time as the New Testament authors were. So they were writing between about the 20s and the 70s AD, so about the same time that the Bible was written. The earliest of Tacitus' writing, he was a great historian, Roman historian, was AD 850, and we have 33 manuscripts. And then in terms of Pliny the Elder, we have one 5th century AD fragment, and the others were from the 14th century and on, and we have 200. So if you look at those, it is absolutely amazing the number of manuscripts we have. Now, a lot of people want to talk about the fact that there are 400,000 errors, they will say, in the New Testament manuscripts. That is not accurate, actually. What there are is 400,000 variants. And I'll give you the most common one. The most common one is something called the movable new. Think of the movable new like the difference between our English words a or a and an. Okay? If someone said, I bought a lollipop, or I bought an lollipop, an would be wrong, but you would still know what they're talking about. That's the movable new. The vast majority of these 400,000 are examples like that. Some of these variants are simply things like changes in spelling as time went on. So as an example, the Brits spell the word color, C-O-L-O-U-R. We spell color, C-O-L-O-R. They're still the same word, but if they're written two different ways, those would be considered a variant. Now, if you stop and think about it, 400,000 variants among 2.6 million pages is actually not very much. When you do that math, you're talking about less than one variant per page. So can you imagine handwriting a page of the Bible and not making a single error in your spelling at all? Some of them are even simple copying, things like writing the Bible instead of the Bible. And according to Daniel Wallace, a renowned scholar about this, he says there has not been a single manuscript discovery that has produced a new reading for the New Testament that scholars think is authentic. And Glennie, another scholar, says the New Testament is the most remarkably preserved book of the ancient world. Now, not only do we have all those manuscripts, but we have what are known as the patristic quotations, or the early church fathers. These are guys like Origen or Irenaeus, some of the guys that were basically, many of them were actually disciples of the disciples. So some of them were disciples of John, for instance, or disciples of Paul himself. And from their quotations of the New Testament, both Bruce Metzger and Bart Ehrman. Bart Ehrman is one of the world's most renowned biblical skeptics. He's a biblical scholar, but he's, by his own admission, agnostic-leaning atheist. Both of them wrote a book that said, so extensive are those citations, meaning of the patristic fathers, that if all other sources for our knowledge of the text of the New Testament were destroyed, in other words, if all 5,600 Greek New Testament manuscripts were destroyed, they would be sufficient alone for the reconstruction of practically the whole New Testament. So you can reconstruct almost the entire New Testament even without the manuscripts. No other book of antiquity even comes close. So it is well preserved. It is accurate. When you look at the New Testament and take just Luke and Acts, written by Luke. Now Luke says in his gospel that he set out to give an accurate history. And when you look at that, when you look at the place names and the names of the people, it is amazing that, for instance, in Acts, when he talks about traveling with Paul to different areas, the names of the people, archaeological findings have found that the names of the people there were among the most common names in that region. Not just in Judea, not just in Jerusalem, not just in Galilee, but throughout all of Paul's travels. The place names were accurate. Everything about it was accurate. And every single archaeological finding has led to more confidence in the New Testament. And not a single archaeological finding has led to anyone disproving something that has been said in the Bible. And I'll give you a couple of examples. For quite some time, it was actually thought that Pontius Pilate was a made-up character for the Bible, because nothing else for quite some time actually mentioned his name. And then archaeological digs found his name, that lo and behold, Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea, at the time that he was said to be prefect of Judea. Another one is, in the Gospels, it talks about Jesus curing the paralytic man at the pool of Bethesda, and that there were 5 colonnades, and that this pool of Bethesda existed near the sheep gate in Jerusalem. And lo and behold, what has archaeology discovered? The pool of Bethesda. We know this because there's an inscription on it that says Bethesda. And how many colonnades did they find? 5. And where did they find it? Near the sheep gate of the old city wall. So every single archaeological finding, both of the New and the Old Testament, for instance, the Tel Dan scrolls or the Tel Dan pottery, it talks about the lineage or the line of David, because people for a long time doubted the historicity of David, the great King David, until they started finding more archaeological findings. So both New and Old Testament archaeologically are backed up as well. You see, where we believe in a God and a history that is rooted in history, not outside of history, like Hinduism, for instance. Ours is historically falsifiable, and every single historical finding has not falsified it, but has rather backed up the Bible. So that's why we should believe in the Bible. Now, one little thing about the Old Testament, it was long thought that parts of the Old Testament were actually written after the time of the New Testament to make the prophecies look more predictive of Jesus. That's how prophetic the book of Isaiah is of the prophecies of Jesus Christ. Until 1940s. And in the 1940s, a young man near Qumran, near the Dead Sea, threw a rock. He was a shepherd. He threw a rock into a cave, and he heard some clay jars break. And ultimately that led to the discovery of multiple caves of the Essenes, which was a break-off Jewish group. And they had many, many copies of the Old Testament. And these copies date from many hundreds of years prior to Christ. And lo and behold, one of them is the great Isaiah scroll, which has essentially the entire book of Isaiah from hundreds of years before Christ. And lo and behold, it is exactly what we have in our Bible today. So everything we have found actually backs up both the New and the Old Testament. So that's why every Christian should have the utmost confidence in our Bible today. Is that any questions about that?
No. Well, the reason I asked that question was I was also asked that question a while back.
We hope that you enjoyed the content of our video today. If you did, make sure to give us a thumbs up and share this content. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so that you are alerted to any new content that we post on our channel. Please remember that all of our video content is completely free of charge and can be reposted, shared, and embedded. You can also find us on Facebook, at facebook.com/Armor of God Apologetics with an S. Thank you for watching and have a blessed day.
For from you are all things, and to you are all things.